Welcome to the Strategic Insight Global Research Update. I think we have to shorten that title, but we have looked more at Latin America in the last couple of months. You've seen more reports on Latin America, and there are a couple of themes that we have been discussing. One is the size of various markets, but then also the opportunity for cross-border managers to enter Latin America. And one of the markets that we've looked at recently is Chile. The pension funds in Chile, and I'm sitting here with one of our research analysts focusing on Latin America, Marlon Valle. Now, when we wrote this report, why did we write on Chile?
Well, May marked the 30th anniversary of Chilean pension fund reform. And what we see is that it's a $150 billion industry. Approximately 50% of that, close to $68 billion, is actually invested overseas.
So you have in the pension fund industry in Chile 150 billion, half of that is in cross-border funds. Why is half of that in cross-border funds? What's the limit right now? Is an opportunity specifically in Chile to invest in cross-border funds? What do regulators allow?
The investment limit, which allows pension assets to be invested overseas, is currently set at 70%. It's going to increase at the end of the second quarter by 5% and an additional 5% at the end of the third quarter, raising that limit to 80%.
It's an interesting piece of or data piece, because in general you see in most markets a domestic bias. So what we see in Chile on the pension fund side is a foreign bias. You can invest up to 80% in non-domestic assets in cross-border funds. So we have 70 billion, almost half of that in cross-border managers. Who are some of the managers that are benefiting? Small, big, are they US, are they European? Who's benefiting from that?
I mean, some of the larger asset managers include Templeton, include Fidelity, Vanguard, and JP Morgan.
Those are all very big.
Yes.
So in general, I guess it's a mix where we have what we talked about with David and Goliath. Oftentimes, Goliath managers, the larger international fund managers, are benefiting from that. Looking at the kind of products that are getting flows on the equity and fixed income side, what did we find? What kind of, are they typically Latin America focused? What kind of products are the main flagship funds getting flows?
On the equity side, we notice that there is the top 10 managers actually hold about 25% of the offshore investments, and it's a bit of a similar focus. 5 of the top 10 products that made it onto that list are Asia focused.
Now, that's an interesting piece.
Yes.
So when we look at equity, and that's an equity, right?
Yes. It's an equity.
So in equity, the top 5 funds focus on Asia in Chile. This isn't a trend that we've discussed in the past quite a bit. It's a meta trend where East and West, West and East, and emerging markets are building bridges. We talked about this in Brazil, where you have Japan themes coming in. We talked about this from a distribution perspective, but in Chile it's very obvious where the 5 largest inflow and foreign managers in cross-border funds are Asia dominated.
Yes.
Do you remember the rest of the top 10? Are there other themes in there?
Latin America is another
Is
focus. I believe there was a fund specifically for Russia. And
JP Morgan had a Russia fund, so that's quite interesting.
The US with an ETF fund.
Okay, so when we look at this, and it's very noticeable, and it's noteworthy that the Asia theme in Latin America is prevalent, and it's an Asia regional theme. It's not very focused on one market only, but then Russia stands out. So JP Morgan has really is occupying that. It's the only fund in the top 10 that focuses specifically on one market, which is Russia. So we have this whole Asia and emerging market link. Now, Chile, in that regard, reminds us a little bit of a hub, of an offshore hub for cross-border funds. Similar to what we talked about in Asia, you have Singapore, you have Hong Kong, you have Taiwan. How is it in Chile? How many funds are registered? Is it a haven? Can we call it a hub?
Well, if we look at Latin America, Chile, along with Colombia and Peru, would be considered the hubs, the offshore hubs for this region. Chile actually has more UCITS registered for sale than you would find in a market like Hong Kong.
Couple of interesting trends then. So if you think about it, if you summarize it, we have a small market in Latin America, Chile, that has 150 billion in pension funds, half of that going to offshore fund managers. These offshore funds registered for sale in Chile are more than in Hong Kong, so it is a hub similar to Peru and Colombia, which we'll write about in future research pieces. And you have a mix, we didn't really touch on that, but I summarized it. We have a mix of Goliath managers and then some what we call David, the boutique managers. They're both from Europe and the US. The most noteworthy thing, however, is that you have emerging market bridges. So you have the top 5 equity themes being Asia in Chile. So the continuation of emerging markets, whether it's from a distribution or an investment standpoint, dominating flows since the crisis is very obvious. And Chile is, as one of the spotlights, an interesting area for us that we will look at in more detail over the summer. So you can expect from us more reports on Latin America, which will then feed into an in-depth study which we will release in the fall when we give a couple of speeches down in Latin America. Thank you for watching the Strategic Insight Global Research Update.